The Riddler's act of blowing up the seawall had a massive impact on Gotham City. The flooding severely affected the slums, triggering looting and riots as conflicts between gangs became increasingly frequent. Furthermore, the death of underground boss Carmine at the hands of the Riddler created a significant power vacuum in the illicit trade industry. Although Carmine's son, Alberto, had taken over as the new leader of the Falcone family, he was merely a drunkard. Meanwhile, a man named Oswald was surveying the city, preparing to embark on his journey to become its king. That night, Oswald arrived at the ruins of Icebox 3. Due to his high nose, round body, and wobbly gait as he walked, people had given him the nickname Penguin. The reason for his late-night visit was to uncover a secret Carmine had hidden in the attic. Oswald smashed open a concealed door and retrieved a stack of documents from inside. These contained information about the members of the Falcone family. Satisfied, Oswald hid the documents under his clothes. He also discovered a box containing priceless jewelry. Suddenly, a gun was pointed at him. The one holding it was Alberto, the new head of the Falcone family. Yet, Oswald did not plead for mercy. Instead, he feigned calmness and proactively handed the jewelry box to Alberto, explaining that he had been entrusted by Carmine to retrieve some items from the attic. However, Alberto, who had spent most of his time wandering the streets, couldn't verify this relationship. Noticing Alberto's hesitation, Oswald pointed out that his hand holding the gun seemed to be trembling slightly. It was clear that Alberto didn't have the courage to shoot, especially since he himself was an addict. Seizing the moment, Oswald suggested there were still some premium products in his office and invited Alberto to check them out. Initially, Alberto sternly declined, but before long, he found himself following Oswald. Under the influence of alcohol and drugs, Alberto began to pour out his innermost thoughts. It turned out that he was secretly preparing for something big, a brand new drug. As long as this new drug was successfully introduced to Gotham, he believed he could fully dominate the city's underworld. Hearing such secrets, Oswald became deeply concerned. Yet Alberto dismissed him as merely a useful pawn in the Falcone family. Alberto believed that, given Oswald's lack of talent and unimpressive appearance, he would always remain a subordinate. Confident in his superiority, Alberto let his guard down and shared these plans freely. To sweeten the deal, Alberto promised to share the profits with Oswald. He even tossed a gemstone necklace to Oswald as a gift. Despite being filled with anger, Oswald outwardly pretended to submit and agreed. Alberto then proudly showed off the ring on his pinky finger, claiming it was a trophy his father had taken after defeating their greatest rival, Salvatore, years ago. Salvatore, as Alberto explained, was a ruthless figure from the previous generation of the underworld. He was also a major nemesis of Batman, but had been convicted for murdering a man named Bucky Benson. When Alberto asked Oswald whether he could achieve the same glory as his father, Oswald gave him an unexpected piece of advice. Drawing from the example of a local leader from his childhood neighborhood, Oswald suggested that a true leader needed to be friendly with the locals and remember everyone's name. Oswald's words were sincere, but Alberto mercilessly mocked him, dismissing his advice as nonsense. He even ridiculed Oswald for aspiring to become such a person. Consumed by uncontrollable rage, Oswald snapped and shot Alberto dead. Immediately realizing the magnitude of his mistake, Oswald knew he needed to erase all traces of the incident. However, just as he began to deal with the situation, a group of gang members approached, trying to steal the wheels from his car. Oswald instantly yelled and drew his gun, forcing most of them to flee. One young black man remained, and Oswald cornered him. As Oswald was about to teach him a lesson, the young man pleaded for mercy. This moment stirred something in Oswald, reminding him of a part of his former self. He checked the man's identification and learned his name was Victor, commonly called Vic. Oswald spared Vic's life, but coerced him into doing a task. First, Vic had to load Alberto's body into the car trunk. Then, he was ordered to drive Oswald to the red light district, where Oswald planned to establish an alibi by spending the night with a woman. When morning came, the two stuffed Alberto's body into the trunk of a broken-down car. Afterward, Oswald suggested that Vic stay and watch the sunrise with him. This was clearly a setup to kill Vic and silence him for good. However, Vic wasn't foolish and quickly begged for mercy, even offering to do anything Oswald asked. Perhaps out of empathy for those living in the slums, Oswald spared Vic's life. He brought Vic back to his apartment and after changing his clothes, prepared to head to work as usual. When Oswald removed his socks, his congenital foot deformity was revealed. Shortly after, they arrived at the Falcone family's factory, where a massive quantity of drugs was produced daily. Fights and bloodshed were frequent occurrences at the site. Before long, Oswald received a call summoning him from the head of the family. On their way to the meeting, Vic was visibly anxious, fearing that the murder of Alberto had been uncovered. Oswald, although unsure of the situation, tried to reassure him. When Oswald entered the living room, he was filled with dread, only to discover that the issue wasn't about Alberto. Instead, the family had decided to shut down the factory under his management and relocate operations to a distant location to restart production. This move would undoubtedly weaken Oswald's influence within the family and the underworld. Oswald, ever ambitious, attempted to defend his position. He even brought up Alberto's new drug deal as if it were his own initiative. However, at that moment, a woman entered the room. She was Carmine's only daughter, Sophia Falcone. In the comics, Sophia is a skilled fighter competitor and known for her ruthlessness. She has eliminated numerous gang leaders, earning her the nickname the Executioner. Sophia's presence there was due to her recent release from Arkham Asylum. Facing this infamous killer, even the two senior executives were visibly cautious around her. Sophia's first words were directed at Oswald, asking if he knew anything about her brother Alberto's disappearance. The senior executives quickly interjected, denying any knowledge. It was evident that they were aware of Alberto's absence, but had chosen to keep the matter quiet to avoid causing panic. Sensing the tension, Oswald found an excuse to leave early, but to his surprise, Sophia followed him and invited him to dinner. At the restaurant, their conversations started on a cheerful note, but it didn't take long for Sophia's demeanor to shift. She pointed out that the new drug was her secret project with Alberto and questioned how Oswald knew about it. Her words clearly implied that Oswald might be involved in Alberto's disappearance. Despite the gravity of the situation, Oswald's sharp communication skills came into play. Within a short time, he managed to divert Sophia's suspicions, leaving her with no concrete evidence against him. The following morning, Oswald visited a small house in the outskirts, which belonged to his mother, Frances. He had come to pack his belongings in preparation for a swift escape. However, Frances noticed Vic's presence and became curious. Coupled with Oswald's strange behavior, she immediately confronted him. Under her questioning, Oswald admitted to killing Alberto. Rather than reprimanding him, Frances expressed pride in her son. She saw the act not as an impulsive mistake, but as a reflection of Oswald's true nature. He was born for a grander stage, and now the opportunity was at hand. After receiving encouragement from his mother, Oswald became deeply contemplative. Following a night of deliberation, he devised a bold plan. The next day, after bidding farewell to Vic, Oswald headed to Brightgeist prison. His goal was to meet Salvatore, who was imprisoned there. Oswald proposed a plan to eliminate the entire Falcone family, suggesting that they could execute it together. At first, Salvatore couldn't believe what he was hearing. It wasn't until Oswald revealed Carmine's ring, the very ring Salvatore had once worn before it was taken from him by Carmine, that Salvatore was struck with disbelief. On his way home, Oswald noticed Sophia waiting for him at his front door, accompanied by a group of henchmen. Realizing he had been discovered, Oswald quickly jumped into his car and sped off. A high-speed chase ensued, ending with Oswald being cornered in a dead-end alley. Though he attempted to hide in the trunk of his car, his efforts were in vain as he was eventually discovered. A fierce brawl broke out inside the vehicle between Oswald and one of Sophia's men. Amid the chaos, Oswald managed to stab the thug in the eye. Blinded and disoriented, the thug stumbled into the path of an oncoming school bus, which struck and killed him instantly. Just as Oswald thought he had escaped danger, he was blindsided and knocked unconscious by a brutal punch. Oswald awoke to find himself bound and subjected to torturous interrogation. Sophia, intent on extracting the truth, prepared to sever one of his arms. Just as she was about to make her move, a car suddenly crashed through the gates of the Falcone estate. The driver's seat was empty, but in the trunk lay Alberto's lifeless body. His pinky finger had been severed. At that moment, Oswald smirked with pride, knowing his plan had succeeded. Sometime later, Oswald managed to escape captivity. It turned out that his visit to Salvatore was not just to return the ring, but also to have Vic sever Alberto's pinky finger, creating fear within the Falcone family of Salvatore's potential retaliation. Here, Oswald and Salvatore began planning their takeover of the Falcone crime family. Meanwhile, Sophia was haunted by her own nightmares. She dreamed of her days at Arkham Asylum, recalling a visit from Alberto. In her nightmare, she saw her brother's severed pinky finger, and in the next moment, someone shot Alberto dead right in front of her. Waking up in the arms of a psychiatrist after struggling against her fears, she eventually calmed down. On the other side, Oswald returned to Brightgeist prison. Unlike his previous visit, this time, all the top leaders of the Moroni family were present. Although Salvatore was angry at having been set up by Oswald, he still agreed to work with him. Oswald immediately reported the latest developments regarding the Falcone family. After Alberto's death, Carmine's brother, Luca, had taken over the family. Oswald claimed he could negotiate with Luca directly. After some exchanges, the two sides reached an agreement. Salvatore would take the blame for Alberto's murder, while Oswald would help them steal the Falcone family's entire drug shipment. According to the plan, Oswald would lure the Falcone men into a truck, while Salvatore would follow in a separate vehicle to ensure everything went smoothly. Salvatore's men only needed to kill the group in the truck to secure the shipment. However, on the day of the operation, an unexpected accident occurred. The second in command of the family, Johnny, unexpectedly appeared and demanded that Oswald board the truck. The reason was that the Moroni family had recently targeted them, so everyone needed to be transported safely. Reluctantly, Oswald complied and climbed into the truck. Fortunately, Oswald's cunning nature worked in his favor. As they neared the agreed location, he took the opportunity to tell jokes, distracting everyone. The moment the attack began, Oswald quickly shot down the remaining men inside the truck. When he opened the doors, Salvatore's men were already there, but unexpectedly, the driver, who had survived, fired a shot that killed one of Salvatore's subordinates. In the ensuing chaos, Oswald called out to Bald Castillo, urging him to escape together. The drugs were left behind for the Moroni family, and Bald Castillo, who accompanied Oswald, was in fact Sophia's trusted subordinate. When Oswald returned, he began explaining the situation, positioning himself as a victim of the events. However, Johnny, equally furious, accused Oswald of being responsible for the loss of the shipment. Their argument was interrupted by Sophia's sudden appearance. She reasoned that there must be a mole within their ranks, working for the Moroni family. However, her deduction was cut short when Luca, the newly arrived family head, reprimanded her. Although Sophia was visibly displeased, she couldn't defy Luca, as he was her father's elder brother. At this moment, Oswald proposed an alliance with Sophia. He suggested that they use Alberto's new drug stockpile to reclaim control over the family. However, Sophia, still distrustful of Oswald, immediately rejected his offer. Knowing Sophia had begun investigating the mole, Oswald devised a plan to frame Luca for the betrayal. Meanwhile, Eve, the prostitute, sought Oswald out. Oswald confided in her about his next steps in the plan. It turned out that among the documents Oswald found from Icebox 3 was evidence of Johnny's affair, and the person involved was none other than Luca's wife. Oswald planned to reveal the incriminating photos to Luca at Alberto's funeral the next day, using them to eliminate Johnny. However, the following morning, Oswald received a call from his mother's neighbor, informing him of issues Frances was experiencing due to her age. After comforting his mother, Oswald rushed to Alberto's funeral, but arrived late, missing the opportunity to speak with Luca privately. Spotting Sophia looking lonely, he approached her instead. To explain his absence earlier, Oswald claimed he had been standing at the back of the crowd, even mentioning that he was Alberto's closest friend. He added that if Alberto were present at such an event, he would undoubtedly have stood at the back as well. These words seemed to endear Sophia to Oswald, lifting her spirits. Sensing her softened demeanor, Oswald shared his own sorrow, revealing that his brother had died long ago, and that his mother had also passed away several years back. Just then, Castillo appeared, summoning Sophia away. Before leaving, Sophia seemed to agree to Oswald's proposal for collaboration. It was revealed that Sophia had previously sought out a former criminal investigator who had once worked for her father. Using a combination of drugs and cash, she bribed him to investigate the stolen shipment. Through this, she learned about Overt, one of Salvatore's injured subordinates from that fateful day. However, saving Overt was solely to interrogate him. Meanwhile, Oswald received a message from the Moroni family. Without delay, he attended a meeting where the subject of discussion was Overt's kidnapping. As with previous occasions, Oswald's communication skills saved his life once again. First, he pointed out that the kidnapping was certainly not something the new boss, Luca, had planned. It was likely that Sophia had acted on her own initiative. To regain Nadia's trust, Oswald also provided evidence of Johnny's affair with Luca's wife. As a result, Oswald was temporarily spared and tasked with bringing Overt back. As soon as he left the meeting, he immediately began planning with Vic. They would fabricate evidence to frame Johnny for Alberto's murder. When Oswald returned to the Falcone mansion, he noticed that Castillo was guarding a room. Thus, Oswald decided to find another way. He went to Johnny's location and began complaining. He said that the drug thief from that day had been captured by Sophia, but why hadn't she reported it to everyone? This prompted Castillo to be taken away for questioning, giving Oswald the chance to sneak into the room where Overt was being held. Meanwhile, Vic was attempting to falsify evidence to blame Johnny, but was discovered by the guards. Fortunately, Vic managed to escape. When Oswald received word that the plan to frame Johnny had failed, he became anxious. However, he quickly came up with a new idea. He would kill Overt instead of rescuing him. But as he entered the hall, Oswald was summoned to meet Luca. It turned out that Sophia had led Luca to the basement where they found Overt dead. As a result, Luca ordered the mansion to be locked down while they searched for the culprit. At that moment, Oswald sensed that something terrible was about to happen, and to his surprise, Johnny was also brought in. Oswald immediately yelled out, expressing his suspicion that Johnny was the spy, even rushing into a scuffle. Though he was quickly stopped, Oswald managed to hide the knife he used as the weapon. However, the knife was found in Castillo's pocket, not Johnny's, which was a coincidence since Castillo was also one of the survivors from the robbery day. Therefore, it made the most sense to blame Castillo. Although Castillo tried to explain himself to Sophia, she couldn't believe him. Shortly afterward, Luca shot him dead. Not only that, but Luca also suggested that Sophia should no longer be involved in the family's business. At that moment, Oswald unexpectedly received a call from Sophia. At her family's cemetery, she officially proposed an alliance with Oswald. In a flashback about Vic's past, he had a very happy girlfriend during this time. Vic's family wasn't wealthy, but they were very close-knit. Not only that, but he also had a tight-knit group of friends. On that day, a series of large explosions suddenly rocked the city. This was when Batman's fans blew up the seawall, causing the seawater to flood the city. Vic could only helplessly watch as his entire family drowned in the water. Back in the present, Oswald was arranging his plan to collaborate with Sophia later that evening. During the conversation, Oswald made it clear how much he looked down on the Falcone family, and after obtaining the supply chain, he would betray Sophia at any moment. He also asked Vic to drive him and Sophia around. Noticing Vic's hesitation, Oswald promised to pay him $1,000 a week. Oswald also encouraged Vic to voice his desires, saying that only by doing so would he be able to demonstrate his value. Vic, feeling the respect from Oswald, no longer hesitated. He boldly asked for a weekly salary of $2,000. Oswald was pleased to see this, this, but immediately declined the offer, stating that salary raises didn't happen that quickly. Just then, Sophia knocked on the door and Salvatore called. So Vic was tasked with making small talk with Sophia, while Oswald would hide in the room to answer Salvatore's call. When Sophia saw Vic open the door, she was a little surprised. After a pleasant conversation with Vic, Oswald came out of the room. Just as they were about to leave, Sophia suggested going to a secret location. She also requested that Oswald go alone with her. Before leaving, Oswald instructed Vic to stay in the room until he returned. However, shortly after, Vic received a call from his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Oswald and Sophia arrived at a new production facility. The raw materials actually came from Arkham, which made Oswald realize that this new drug clearly wasn't Alberto's idea. The real mastermind behind it was Sophia, and the new drug was made from a type of mushroom that could create a powerful teleportation effect. The reason Sophia wanted to collaborate with Oswald was because she greatly valued his distribution channels. At the same time, Vic's girlfriend arrived at the apartment. It had been a long time since the couple had seen each other, and Vic chose not to tell her everything. Vic only told his girlfriend that he was working as a driver for a powerful boss. At that moment, Vic received shocking news. His girlfriend wanted to move to another city. After the flood, they had been living in temporary government housing, and she wanted to leave to rebuild their life elsewhere. She even suggested that Vic come with her. After hesitating, Vic confessed the truth about his job, that his boss was involved in organized crime. Just then, Vic received a message that Oswald was returning, and he urgently told his girlfriend to leave quickly. Meanwhile, Sophia returned to the mansion, where she was confronted by Johnny. It turned out Johnny knew that Sophia was pursuing her own business plan. To cut off her hopes, he had booked a plane ticket for her to Italy. The next day, Oswald and Sophia arrived at Chinatown, the territory of the Triad. In the past, Carmine had driven the Triad into this neighborhood, so there was an inevitable grudge between them. As soon as Oswald and Sophia entered the Triad's bar, they were surrounded. The vice leader of the Triad was eager to know why they were there. When he learned that they planned to use the new drug to overthrow the Falcone family, the vice leader felt the risk was too great. In response, Oswald immediately stated that they had an ally, Johnny. Although Sophia was surprised, she chose not to ask about this matter there. Seeing this, the vice leader said he would allow them to meet the Triad leader if they could prove Johnny was on their side. While they were negotiating, Vic was noticed by the police for illegal parking. After checking, the police discovered that Vic was carrying a large amount of cash and immediately asked why he had so much money. Vic seemed to understand the officer's unspoken intentions. He quickly denied having any cash, and seeing that Vic understood, the officer took the money and let him go as if nothing had happened. Afterwards, Vic and Oswald went to a restaurant where Vic jokingly mentioned bribing the police earlier, making both of them laugh. Oswald praised Vic for becoming smarter over time. At the table across from them, one of the two women went to the restroom. It turned out the other woman was Tina, Luca's wife, who had been having an affair with Johnny. The next day, Oswald and Sophia came up with a plan. While Johnny was having an affair with Tina, they suddenly stormed into the room. Oswald took this opportunity to demand that Johnny listen to Sophia. However, Johnny stubbornly refused and even humiliated Oswald in front of them. Johnny claimed that the only reason Oswald was still in the family was because they considered him a slave for fun and that no one actually respected him. Unable to take any more, Oswald shoved a dagger into Johnny's mouth. After some threats, Johnny finally relented. The transaction with the Triad went smoothly that night, but they still needed to organize a small sale event to promote the new drug. Oswald approached the prostitutes in the bar to sell the new product, with Vic taking responsibility for supplying the drugs. On the dance floor, Vic and the women continuously promoted the new merchandise. Even when the price doubled, the sales didn't stop. At the same time, Oswald and Sophia met with the Triad's Grand Leader. The initial negotiation didn't go well because the Grand Leader felt that the deal was too risky. Meanwhile, Vic started seeing hallucinations from the flashing lights in the bar, reminiscent of the explosion from years ago. The shock caused some of the drugs to spill onto the floor, but Vic continued to hallucinate, seeing his girlfriend and the flooding scene from that time. Fortunately, one of the women snapped him back to reality. On the other side, Sophia was explaining the unique qualities of the new drug. She told the Triad leader that whoever controlled the drug would become the ruler of the underground world. She further stated that if the Triad didn't cooperate, she would find someone else, and walked away. Vic had regained his composure in the restroom. Just then, Oswald burst in to announce that the deal was complete and they should celebrate. He praised Vic for his excellent performance that night. However, at that moment, Vic's phone rang, and he quickly hid it behind his back. Oswald sensed something was wrong and asked to check the conversation history. Vic then explained everything and expressed his desire to leave the city with his girlfriend. This declaration greatly disappointed Oswald. However, Oswald still respected Vic's decision. Earlier, he had pulled out a gun and asked Vic to confirm his choice one more time. He even made Vic look into the mirror and ask himself if he really wanted to give up his future career for a woman. In the end, Vic's decision was to leave, but when he arrived at the location he had agreed upon with his girlfriend, he didn't step out of the car. Even when he saw his girlfriend walking away, he didn't get out to stop her. At that moment, Vic finally understood that Oswald never wanted him to leave. It was Vic Vic who wanted to live a better life, to be respected, and to change his destiny, so he chose to stay with Oswald. Meanwhile, Oswald and Sophia were discussing their future plans when suddenly a car crashed toward them. It turned out to be members of the Maroney family, led by Nadia. As Oswald and Sophia's lives were under threat, Vic returned just in time to stab one of the men. Oswald seized the opportunity to jump into a car and escape, leaving Sophia behind. Before the chaos, the Maroney family discovered that Oswald was planning to smuggle the new drug. Oswald's entire scheme was exposed right there. Nadia pointed out that he was the real murderer who killed Alberto. Just before Sophia could react, Vic appeared to rescue Oswald. Sophia was left behind, but fortunately, the Maroney family's target was Oswald. Sophia tried to escape and called her personal doctor to pick her up. 10 years ago, Sophia was the eldest daughter of the Falcone family. She behaved gracefully like an ordinary woman. At that time, Oswald was simply Sophia's driver. After a charity event, as they were about to leave, a female reporter blocked their way. The reporter first complimented Sophia on her charitable works, but then suddenly brought up the past 10 years, mentioning the many cases of women who had hanged themselves. Coincidentally, Sophia's mother had also passed away in the same manner. This made Sophia's expression change. Upon realizing the reporter's identity, Sophia immediately decided to leave. That evening, Carmine was very pleased with his daughter's recent work, but Alberto felt completely the opposite. He angrily left the house after receiving a message. Carmine, seeing Alberto as too useless, decided to hand over his entire family to Sophia. Sophia was delighted with this, but as she thought about the reporter's words, her emotions changed. Under her father's questioning, Sophia finally spoke about her mother. Clearly before her death, her mother had no mental illness, but everyone had said that she took her own life due to depression. Carmine was shocked and scolded Sophia for bringing up the painful past. The next day, Sophia decided to approach the reporter. It was then that she learned that the recent suicides of women were all fabricated. They had all been murdered, killed in a similar manner, with signs of a struggle still visible on their fingers. Sophia then recalled the night her mother died. Her mother's fingers had shown the same marks. By chance, Sophia noticed a scratch on her father's hand, and she eventually realized that her father was the killer. However, she refused to admit it and bribed the reporter to keep the secret. On the night of Carmine's birthday party, the family gathered together, but at that moment of happiness, Sophia was called to meet her father privately. It turned out that Oswald had told him about Sophia meeting the reporter, which made Carmine furious, believing that she had betrayed him. Sophia, in fear, repeatedly emphasized her loyalty to Carmine, but deep down, she couldn't let go of the truth about her mother's death. Her words revealed that she knew the truth about what happened years ago. In order to hide this truth forever, Carmine declared that his daughter was mentally ill. After that, Sophia was arrested by the police, who were arranged by Carmine in advance, including the reporter she had met. Although Oswald wanted to protect Sophia, he was stopped by the police. Inside the police station, Alberto and the lawyer tried to find a solution for Sophia, but Carmine had arranged everything, concluding that Sophia had inherited her mental illness from her mother. As a result, she was sent to the Gotham psychiatric hospital. Betrayed by her family, she fell into complete despair. At that time, only Alberto remained by her side. In Gotham, Sophia was treated like an animal, and she met the psychiatrist, Dr. Julian. Sophia continuously insisted that she had been treated unjustly, but it was clear that the head of the department had been bribed. Sophia also discovered that a mad woman lived next to her cell. Sophia called the woman who tormented her Magpie. Magpie constantly babbled nonsensical things, and her screams terrified Sophia. The next day, during mealtime, Magpie approached Sophia and received a red pill from a guard. This was the first time Sophia saw such a strange drug. Suddenly, a woman came to approach Sophia, and without warning, an intense beating ensued. Despite Sophia's cries for help, no one intervened. It was clear that this was all orchestrated by Carmine. Julian, the psychiatrist, observed everything and began to believe that Sophia might have been set up. Not long after, Sophia was taken to the cafeteria alone. After being untied, she was handed a fork. Her opponent was the same madwoman who had attacked her before. It was evident that they wanted Sophia to kill the woman with the fork. Although Sophia tried to resist, her opponent grabbed the fork and, to Sophia's horror, plunged it into her own throat, revealing that she was also a pawn in the scheme to frame Sophia. Sophia was then bound and subjected to electroshock therapy. Despite Julian's desire to help, he was powerless to do anything. The continuous pain broke Sophia's spirit, and she began hallucinating, often seeing her mother in her cell. She developed post-traumatic stress disorder, frequently dreaming of herself being hanged. The trauma was too much for her to bear. When Alberto came to visit, he found Sophia in an even worse state, his attempts to comfort her only leading to greater disappointment. The head of the hospital was also one of Carmine's people, so Sophia might have to remain in the psychiatric hospital for the rest of her life. Although Alberto continued to encourage her to fight, Sophia had completely given up. Back in the cafeteria, Julian couldn't help and repeatedly apologized, but Sophia no longer cared. She sat there, blankly, ignoring Magpie, who kept murmuring beside her. Then, Magpie revealed that she was a spy planted by the head of the hospital. Sophia was stunned for a moment and finally realized that wherever she was, betrayal surrounded her. Sophia then sprang up and attacked Magpie in a frenzy. It didn't take long for Magpie to lose her life. But in the next moment, Sophia was injected with the new drug, causing her to lose consciousness immediately. Returning to the present, Sophia found herself lying in Julian's house, but now she trusted no one anymore. She finally said goodbye to Julian and vowed to get revenge on those who had betrayed her. That night, Sophia returned to the villa as an uninvited guest. Everyone was displeased with her current appearance. She even interrupted Luca's speech and publicly accused everyone present of betraying her. Although they were all angry with Sophia, what she said was the truth. After leaving the meeting, Sophia smoked alone in a room, and to clear the smoke smell, she opened a part of the window. She then brought Johnny's daughter, who was also her niece, into the greenhouse to eat some cake. The night passed like this until the morning. When Sophia walked into the villa carrying a briefcase, everyone had collapsed. She quickly went down to the basement to restore the ventilation system. Then, she walked through room after room, finding dead bodies scattered all around. Finally, she reached her room and picked up the gun beside the bed. To her surprise, Johnny was still alive and sleeping peacefully after the night passed. Meanwhile, Oswald was dealing with the broken sports car alongside Vic. He was glad to have Vic back. As they talked, Oswald's men, whom he had gathered, quickly arrived. Oswald then instructed them to prepare for a counterattack against the Maroney family. The first target was Salvatore's son, Taj. Based on a short video Taj had posted, Oswald easily located him. The next step was to take threatening photos of Nadia and demand she return the batch of the new drugs she had taken. To ensure the safety of Salvatore's son, Salvatore agreed to the terms. But that wasn't the entirety of Oswald's plan. As he left, he handed a large sum of money to the jailer to find an opportunity to kill Salvatore. At that moment, Oswald was taken aback by the news on TV. All members of the Falcone family were dead, except for Sophia. Oswald immediately understood the cause behind this incident. Meanwhile, Sophia was sending her niece to an orphanage. She had been interviewed by Gotham's police chief about Johnny's disappearance. Though they suspected Johnny might be the murderer, the police chief seemed to have more suspicion about Sophia. In response to his questions, Sophia retorted sharply, and only after that did the police chief leave. Shortly after, Sophia brought a metal bucket to the family cemetery. It turned out that Johnny was locked up by Sophia. She had no intention of blackmailing him. Instead, she needed some useful information, such as the money Carmine had hidden before his death. However, Johnny would rather die than reveal it. It wasn't that he wasn't afraid of death, but he knew that if he spoke, Sophia would certainly kill him. So, she poured cold water over Johnny. Meanwhile, Oswald's group was preparing for the exchange, and he had also asked Vic to take care of his mother. On the other side, Sophia was lying on a coffin, talking with Johnny. At this point, he was shivering from the cold. Finally, he opened his mouth, but to Sophia's surprise, the first thing Johnny said was about her mother. It turned out that Johnny was Sophia's mother's cousin. The reason her mother married Carmine was to help Johnny secure his position. Initially, Carmine loved Sophia's mother, but over time, their relationship began to fall apart. The night she died, Johnny had wanted to take Sophia and her mother and escape, but the plan was too late. At that moment, Johnny also begged Sophia to let him return home and promised to make up for his mistakes with her mother. At the Brightgeist prison, the jailer who had been bribed by Oswald attacked Salvatore. Meanwhile, Nadia had arrived at the agreed location. Oswald, seeing this, took Taj outside. After confirming that the shipment was fine, he had the prisoners released. But at that moment, gunmen from the Maroney family suddenly rushed out and started shooting wildly. Fortunately, Oswald's group had been prepared, and they easily dealt with the ambush. During this time, Oswald pulled out a lighter. It turned out that what was poured on Johnny wasn't water, but gasoline. With just one spark, Taj and Nadia were engulfed in flames. In the flickering light, the two slowly lost their voices. Afterward, Oswald's group quickly drove away from the scene. It could be said that Oswald had won the night. Not only had he killed all the high-ranking members of the Maroney family, but he had also collected the new drug shipment to bring back. However, upon returning, there was a problem. The mushrooms used to produce the new drug. Sophia had previously mentioned that these mushrooms were fragile and would wither if left outside for too long. By the time Oswald realized it, most of the mushrooms had been destroyed, leaving only a few healthy ones in the box. But this would not be enough to create a drug empire. At that moment, the jailer called Oswald, but when he picked up the phone, it was Salvatore on the other end. It turned out that Salvatore had killed the jailer and escaped from prison, undoubtedly seeking revenge for the things Oswald had done. Unexpectedly, Oswald boldly declared that Salvatore's wife and children were already dead. But as soon as he hung up, Oswald called Vic to have his mother temporarily go into hiding. Clearly, Oswald was frightened and confused. On the other side, Sophia had become the only person left in the Falcone estate. Just then, Dr. Julian arrived. It turned out that Julian had fallen in love with Sophia. He wanted to express his loyalty to her and wished to join the Falcone family. Sophia slowly walked into the family hall and expressed that the world had long suffered because of the Falcone family, and from that day on, the Falcone family would officially disappear, replaced by the Gigante family, which was also her mother's surname. This announcement directly left Johnny confused. As he continued to voice his objections, Sophia pulled out a gun and shot him dead in front of everyone. Afterward, she threw the money that Carmine had hidden for years onto the table. She declared that anyone who didn't want to join could leave, but those those who stayed would be able to hold the money in their hands. As soon as Sophia finished speaking, the group began to greedily snatch up the money. Sophia and Julian exchanged a satisfied smile, while Vic had taken Mrs. Francis to the dilapidated slums of Graupoint. However, they were quickly spotted by a local gang leader who was also a low-ranking member of the Falcone family's drug network. At Salvatore's hideout, he was sorrowfully holding a photo of his wife when suddenly a gunshot rang out from outside. Not long after, Sophia arrived. But to everyone's surprise, she wasn't there for revenge. Instead, she came to form an alliance to track down the betrayer, Oswald. Sophia and Salvatore's alliance was like a couple from a comic book, and this union could also be a tribute to their relationship in the story. Meanwhile, Oswald had reached the hideout of his mother and Vic. He quickly embraced his mother, showing his vulnerability at that moment. He even considered giving up everything. Immediately, Francis scolded him, saying he was too cowardly to even protect his own mother. At this point, Vic had regained consciousness, and the two of them immediately began discussing Oswald's past. It turned out that he, like Vic in his younger years, had grown up in the slums. Oswald had shared some joyful times with his two brothers, but when they both passed away, he gradually worked his way up to the position he was in now. While reflecting on these memories, Oswald noticed a subway ticket in a piggy bank, which sparked an idea in his mind. Vic and Oswald quickly made their way to an abandoned subway entrance. Inside the tunnel, the place had been long deserted, with not only a generator but also various other equipment. Oswald explained that the dark and damp environment made it the perfect spot to grow mushrooms. This seemed like a new turning point for him after his time in hiding. Over time, Oswald and his group had grown into a significant force. The 2 boxes of mushrooms they started with had now transformed into a full-fledged drug empire. Meanwhile, Sophia had just shared an intimate moment with Julian. During Oswald's time in hiding, the two had become a couple. As for Salvatore, he had taken on the role of the family chef, and it seemed like their relationship was now quite close. After helping with the cooking, Sophia and Salvatore quickly shifted the topic to Oswald, noting that they hadn't been able to locate him in a while. In fact, the new drug from Oswald was becoming more widespread, and to trace its origins, they would need a mediator. Their first step would be to implement measures to stop the drug gangs. Meanwhile, in the slums, Oswald was trying to play music when suddenly the circuit breaker was flipped, and the generator stopped working at that very moment. At the same time, Oswald received the news that Sophia was exacting her revenge. 3 thugs from the gang who had helped Oswald acquire drugs were found hanging on the streets, a clear message from Sophia to all the gangs. No one should collaborate with Oswald anymore. Even if Oswald were to distribute the drugs for free now, no one would dare to take them. But since Sophia wanted to cut off Oswald's supply chain, he decided to act in the opposite way. As long as there was demand, these gangs would eventually come to him for the product. He quickly mobilized all his people and began distributing the drugs for free across different locations in Gotham. His goal was to make sure everyone knew about the existence of the new drug. However, Vic ran into some trouble along the way. On his route, he encountered the gang leader from before, who stopped him and made it clear that he knew what Vic was doing. The leader even expressed interest in joining the gang, which Vic immediately recognized as a problem. He had no choice but to pretend to agree. Meanwhile, Sophia and Salvatore were breaking into Oswald's old apartment. When Salvatore saw a photo of Oswald's mother and brother, he came up with the idea of capturing them. But Sophia quickly pointed out that they were both dead. Salvatore was deeply disappointed by this revelation and angry at Oswald for causing him to lose everything. But now, with nothing left, he felt powerless to exact revenge. At that moment, Sophia discovered a woman's underwear in a drawer, along with a photograph. Later that night, Vic returned to report the threat from the mob to Oswald, who was focused on repairing the generator. With the growing concern about his mother's condition, Oswald had little focus on anything else. Francis was now suffering from Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's, which led Oswald to lament the unfairness of society. On top of that, the power supply to his underground base was in danger. In that moment, he gazed toward the city's district, and a bold idea began to form in his mind. Not long after, he was attacking a politician who had just attended an event. Oswald used pliers to pinch the politician's nose, demanding dirty information to blackmail him. He warned that by tonight, the electricity in the slums had to be restored, or the politician's life would be ruined. After some threats, the politician quickly agreed. Soon after, Oswald received a call from other gangs. They blamed him for distributing drugs, which had led to his people being attacked by Sophia. Faced with the gang's fury, Oswald was unfazed. Instead, he invited all the gangs to meet him directly. Meanwhile, Sophia was searching for someone in the red light district. Most people she questioned claimed to know nothing. However, unexpectedly, one of Oswald's closest allies chose to tip Sophia off. Before long, Sophia found Eve, the prostitute, and despite Sophia approaching her with a gun, Eve remained calm. Eve revealed that she knew why Sophia was there. The person who tipped Sophia off was actually part of Eve's plan. She understood she couldn't escape and chose to face Sophia head-on. Seeing Eve's composure, Sophia realized that she wouldn't betray Oswald, but she was still curious as to why Eve wanted to meet with her. It turned out that Eve hoped Sophia wouldn't hurt anyone else before her death. Eve revealed that her loved ones had all died at Sophia's hands, and she clarified that those victims were killed by Sophia's father. Oswald was aware of this, but still chose to work for the murderer. After explaining everything, Sophia spared Eve's life. In return for Sophia's respect, Eve revealed that Oswald was hiding in the slums. At that moment, Vic found a gangster who had threatened to join the group. He tried to pay the man to stay quiet, but the gangster turned the tables and tried to blackmail Vic. He also threatened to tell Sophia where Vic was. With no other options, Vic shot the gangster dead, but he was left shaken and terrified after taking someone's life. When he returned to Oswald, the latter immediately noticed something was off. Upon learning what had happened, Oswald expressed gratitude and relief, as it seemed Vic had truly matured. He then told Vic to rest up, as he had an important deal to attend to. At the location of the meeting, Oswald stepped out of the car, facing all the gangs with guns pointed at him. He reassured everyone by tossing a few cans of beer their way, before starting to analyze the situation. While the Gigante and Maroney families were the two dominant forces in Gotham, Oswald explained that smaller groups like theirs, when united, could become even more powerful. They were all people from the bottom of Gotham, the ones who truly built the city. Gotham, once their territory, was now being invaded and looted by outsiders. Despite the challenges, Oswald encouraged the gangs to cooperate for greater profit. As he spoke, a few gangs began to waver, but it was the Triad who truly understood Oswald. The Triad leader suspected Oswald of being a master manipulator, yet Oswald's eloquence was unparalleled. Even in a disadvantageous position, he could easily turn the tide. He explained that he had risked everything to get to where he was, and that it was the greatest form of sincerity. He asked everyone to rise up against the oppressors. As he spoke, he cracked open a can of beer, declaring that he had killed Alberto and stolen Sophia's goods. He added that he, too, was just like everyone else, a child of Gotham, living at the lowest level, fighting for honor. At those words, the crowd was impressed, and one by one, they opened their cans of beer, even the Triad leader joining in. At that moment, the power was restored to the slums, and Vic and Francis celebrated, dancing to the music. However, what they didn't realize was that Sophia had arrived at the doorstep. The scene shifted back in time, many years ago, when Oswald was still a child, deeply attached to his mother. Back then, his older brother and younger sibling were still alive, and due to his limitations, Oswald could only watch the others play. There was one key detail though. Oswald had never taken his eyes off his mother. It seemed that his older and younger siblings had stolen the love she had for him. This was confirmed when Francis noticed that the coat of the youngest son was worn out and needed replacing. At that moment, Oswald's face showed clear resentment. Following his mother's request, Oswald reluctantly went out to play with his brothers, but while his older brother and younger sibling enjoyed playing sports, Oswald found fascination in the luxury cars on the streets. When he encountered the gang leader of the time, Oswald became even more excited. As the rain began to fall, the three brothers took refuge in their underground hideout. However, the older and younger siblings ventured further down into the sewer, and Oswald, due to his physical limitations, couldn't join them. He ended up sealing off the only exit and coldly walked away. Returning home, when his mother asked about his brothers, Oswald merely claimed they had gone to watch a movie, and Francis didn't question it. The result was tragic. His siblings drowned in the sewer. Now in the present, Oswald felt an eerie sense of relief. However, when he returned home, he found the door lock had been broken. Upon rushing into the room, he discovered Vic unconscious on the floor, and his mother was gone. When Vic regained consciousness, he learned that Sophia was behind it all. Meanwhile, Salvatore's men had arrived at Oswald's hideout. Realizing the danger, Oswald ordered Vic to leave immediately and seek help from the Triad. But as soon as Vic left, Oswald surrendered without resistance. As a result, Oswald was brutally beaten by Salvatore. Afterward, Salvatore demanded that Oswald reveal the location of his secret mushroom-growing base. Upon receiving the call from Salvatore, Sophia was pleased with the progress. Soon after, Oswald was dragged to the entrance of the factory. While Salvatore announced that he would take over the place, Oswald and the electrician in front of him had devised a plan. First, Oswald attempted to drive a wedge between Salvatore and Sophia's alliance. However, Salvatore was indifferent to this. Seeing that, Oswald shifted tactics and taunted Salvatore by bringing up the deaths of his wife and children. This infuriated Salvatore, giving the electrician an opening to act. The base immediately plunged into darkness, and the members from both sides began attacking each other. Oswald took advantage of his knowledge of the terrain to seize Salvatore's weapon. A fierce struggle ensued between the two. Just when Salvatore seemed to have the upper hand, he suddenly retreated in pain. Oswald, thinking it was some sort of trick, taunted him further. However, Salvatore truly collapsed, and Oswald, frustrated by the short fight, fired 2 more shots. He then took Salvatore's ring and slid it onto his own finger. This act symbolized Oswald finally becoming like Carmine. After throwing Salvatore's lifeless body out, Oswald marked the victory. The next step was to rally everyone and prepare for war against Sophia's family. Meanwhile, Sophia had just arrived at the orphanage. When she saw her niece locked in a room, memories of her own time in Arkham resurfaced. The two women then recounted the night her niece had witnessed the gas mask. Sophia, who had longed to bury her past, found herself reflecting on her time in Arkham when she saw the cuts on her niece's hands. As she held her niece close, she whispered that her mother and her family, those who had passed, were all bad people evil, and therefore, they deserved to die. This was her opportunity to escape the house of sin and welcome a new life. It was clear that Sophia saw a reflection of her old self in her niece, which is why she didn't want her niece to become like her. At that moment, she received a call from Salvatore, but to her surprise, he was dead, and the voice on the other end was Oswald's. Oswald proposed a deal to trade his drug empire for his mother, a deal that Sophia had agreed to. When she returned, she shared the details of the arrangement with Julian, but he felt this was a trap, which Sophia knew too. However, after spending time with her niece, Sophia became confused about her true desires. She hoped that Julian could help her clarify her thoughts. Under the guidance of the psychiatrist, Sophia eventually realized that what she truly wanted was not a criminal empire, but freedom. That night, Sophia's car arrived on time, and Oswald's men lay in ambush around the area. But something strange happened. Only a driver appeared, and Sophia called to reveal that she didn't care about Oswald's drugs at all. All she wanted was pure revenge. Sophia wanted Oswald to feel the pain that she had endured. Oswald, sensing something was off, opened the car door. Sophia's revenge unfolded in a cold, calculated manner. After Oswald opened the car door, he was horrified to find that what he thought was his mother's corpse was actually a bomb. It would detonate in less than 20 seconds. In a panic, Oswald left his men behind and rushed toward the nearest storm drain, desperately trying to escape the impending explosion. Meanwhile, Francis had already been taken by Sophia to an abandoned nightclub. The bomb exploded shortly afterward, engulfing Oswald and his crew in flames. The next day, Oswald miraculously survived the explosion, emerging from the rubble, but he was soon knocked unconscious by a detective who had been bribed by Sophia. As Oswald lay incapacitated, Vic arrived with several gang leaders, intent on finding him. However, the gang leaders believed Oswald was dead, and with the drug factory destroyed, they had no reason to continue the search. Vic, enraged by their cowardice, called them spineless and refused to be intimidated, even when they pointed guns at him. Realizing he couldn't rely on them, Vic plunged into the chaos alone, but he couldn't find Oswald anywhere. Meanwhile, Oswald was being held captive by Sophia, tied to a chair, with Francis secured in a chair opposite him. When the cloth was removed from his face, Oswald immediately lashed out in anger. Sophia demanded that Oswald confess to his involvement in the deaths of his siblings, but he angrily denied any responsibility. The truth, however, was already well known to Sophia and everyone involved. She threatened to cut off Francis's fingers unless Oswald admitted to his actions, but Oswald stubbornly refused to own up to killing his family. At this moment, Francis also revealed that she had known everything Oswald had done and had even despised him for many years. When she was released, she was surprised by Oswald's coldness, realizing that he cared for no one but himself. In her anger, Francis smashed a bottle of liquor and stabbed Oswald in the stomach. The pain from the wound caused Oswald immense suffering, and in that moment, Francis seemed to see her two lost sons. However, as she charged toward him, her body weakened, and she collapsed to the ground. Seeing this, Oswald exploded with a power he had never shown before. He took down a subordinate and shot another man behind him. Then, still firing, he fled with his mother. As he stepped outside, Oswald shot and killed the corrupt detective. When Sophia gave chase, Oswald had already driven off. Soon after, Oswald took his mother to the hospital. He then secretly stole a phone and called Vic. When Vic arrived, he found Oswald tending to his own wounds. After learning that the other gangs had already left, Oswald was not surprised, as he had already planned his counterattack against Sophia. Meanwhile, Sophia was meeting with all the gang leaders. She told them that she would be leaving the city that night, and anyone who wanted to take over her business had to bring Oswald to her. At the same time, Oswald had changed into clean clothes and went to City Hall. There, the politician he had previously blackmailed appeared. Oswald revealed that Sophia was the one who had bombed the residential area with the intention of destroying the underground drug factory. The drug factory belonged to the Moroni family, who had developed a new drug that attracted an attack from the Falcone family. The evidence included the wreckage of a Falcone family truck found at the scene, along with Salvatore's body. The politician realized that by capturing Sophia, he could end years of war in the underworld. Furthermore, the politician had just restored power to the slums, and such political achievements would allow him to quickly rise in the political field. However, the politician still couldn't fully believe Oswald's words. At this point, Oswald also expressed his view, stating that he might want to participate in politics and business in the future. In the end, the two reached an agreement. Outside, Vic received a call from the deputy leader of the Triad. He guessed that Vic was with Oswald and shared a plan. So, after Oswald left City Hall, the deputy leader's men invited him into a car. Sophia quickly received the news that Oswald had been captured and was overjoyed, spilling wine throughout the house. She then lit 3 cigarettes and set fire to everything in the room. At the airport, Sophia prepared to meet Oswald before leaving, but the deputy leader of the Triad shot the main leader dead. Oswald, in turn, picked up a gun and eliminated all of Sophia's subordinates. He then calmly invited Sophia to join him. Not only was the leader of the Triad killed, but all the other gang leaders were also eliminated. The underground forces were now entirely aligned with Oswald. At this point, Sophia truly recognized that Oswald was the voice of the gangs. When they arrived, Sophia closed her eyes, ready for Oswald to kill her. However, nothing happened. Instead, the sound of sirens echoed, and Sophia was arrested by the police. leaving her bewildered. In fact, this was part of Oswald's agreement with the politician. Only by capturing Sophia could his reputation grow even further. When Oswald and Vic arrived at the hospital, they found that Francis had become a vegetable. Oswald immediately collapsed upon seeing this. Afterward, Oswald and Vic sat by the river, talking for a long time. During this moment, Oswald confided that he considered Vic as family. Without Vic, there would be no victory. However, soon after, Oswald grabbed Vic by the neck. It turned out that after the incident with his mother, Oswald believed that family only brought weakness. To eliminate any future vulnerabilities, Oswald decided to kill his close companion, Vic. Meanwhile, at Arkham, Julian had arrived because Sophia had also returned to the mental hospital. Sophia, now like a zombie, huddled in a corner. Suddenly, Julian handed her a letter. It was from her half-sister Selina. After reading its contents, Sophia immediately smiled. Now, Oswald had completely changed his attire, resembling a noble from the upper class. He was living in a luxurious apartment and had converted the top floor into a hospital room for his comatose mother. This was Oswald's promise, to let his mother live in a luxurious penthouse with a view of the entire city. However, in reality, this was undoubtedly a tremendous ordeal for her. After that, Oswald went downstairs to meet the prostitute Eve, dressed like his mother. At that moment, the sky in the distance lit up with the Batman logo. And that concludes the story of Penguin, a story that culminated in Oswald's manipulation of the underworld. Thank you all for your attention and for following along. Goodbye, and see you in the next videos. Bye-bye.